So I don't know if you know about this little known system. It's called the DS. Of course you know about it. It sold 15 million units in its first year alone. Well, not this one specifically. This is the DS Lite, the slimmer and trimmer cousin of the DS that released about a year later. But we're not talking about that one either. Today we're going to be talking about its slimmer and trimmer first cousin, the DSi. This thing has so many memories for me. I got it over 10 years ago, but I loved the photo taking, the sound recording, the DSiWare. It was all so good. Where was I? All right, well here's the thing. This system was only designed just a few months after the DS Lite released, but it turns out the original design for the DSi was actually going to be bigger, thicker, and heavier than the DS Lite. So on today's episode of Beta64, we're going to be talking about the development of the DSi.
Development for the system started in late 2006 with project leader Masato Kuwahara taking the lead, whose previous work was helping with the Game Boy camera and coining the name Download Play, a feature that was going to be included with another project of his, the Game Boy Advance wireless adapter, before it was scrapped and added to the DS. For the DSi though, this would be his first time as hardware project lead, and it wasn't gonna be easy. With strict deadlines approaching, I'm talking it had to be designed and presented by December, they had to come up with something quick that would be worthy as the successor of the DS Lite. Why though? Why was there such a desperate need at Nintendo to create a new DS that quick? Well, it turned out during that time, the demand for the DS was starting to fall a bit in Japan. Even though they were still outselling the PSP, Nintendo decided that a new DS hardware revision would really be a good idea to stimulate sales in Japan. They didn't really quite care so much about the overseas though, as you can see by these release dates.
5 months, oof.
We are getting a bit ahead of ourselves though. Let's go back to late 2006 and see what the team behind the DSi had come up with for the new system. After all, there was a lot riding on the ideas they came up with. They've got to revitalize the DS in Japan with no launch games to help the system, and they've got to prove that this new DS was going to be better than the DS Lite, a system that had only released months before their designing process started. This wasn't going to be an easy task. They had to make sure that this new system had everything that anyone could want out of a DS, so they decided to give it 2 game card slots.
Okay, got one question about that. Why? Why do we have 2 DS game slots? You can only play 1 DS game at a time. Am I the weird one for thinking this? Because apparently, according to an Iwata Ask, at Nintendo, there was a huge demand for 2 game card slots, and apparently a lot of requests among gamers. Well, you can't argue with gamers, so sure, let's do 2 game card slots. What else do we want to put in this thing?
Well, we've got the classic front and back facing cameras, a staple of the system. Those were put in pretty early on in development. Even before the hardware was settled on, they told developers that the cameras were definitely going to be in. So if they wanted to get a head start making games using a camera, they could just borrow the Game Boy Advance camera from Cow Training, a face training app for the DS that I had no idea existed, but now I actually kind of want it. So if you're in Japan or Europe and you want to send me a copy, here's my PO. Now, even though the team already knew that they wanted to include a camera from the beginning, there was still some debate around how to do it. See, in the team's mind, the reason for including a camera was obvious. The DS already had a sense of touch with the touchscreen, the ability to hear with the microphone, so why not allow it to see with the camera? That way, epic gamers could use it to take pictures of, I don't know, rocks. That all was accomplished with the outward camera, but they also wanted a front-facing one too for various gameplay elements. But having 2 cameras just seemed like a waste. So they considered having just 1 camera that swiveled, much like those newfangled flip phones that were around. There was a bit of a problem though. You know how Nintendo is known for making some rock-solid systems, like that Game Boy that survived a bomb? Yeah, so Nintendo didn't want the DSi to be any different. I don't think they were accounting for a bomb per se, but adding the swivel idea to the system would decrease durability and increase its size. So despite it being less cost-effective, they went forward with the idea of having 2 cameras instead. And with that came internal storage to hold those photos and an SD card slot too, though the latter was added a bit reluctantly. They weren't really sure if an SD card would really be that useful for game developers, but Miyamoto kept pushing its addition into the system, promising that if they added it, he would use it. So with that promise in mind, they added it in, and at that point, the hardware was just about finished with just a few other additions. They included a larger screen due to consumer demand, they included higher quality speakers and louder audio playback due to consumer demand too, a matte surface was added to keep away fingerprints at the request of consumers, and of course we've got that sweet double DS card slot that was added also due to consumer demand. So with all that in place, the team started putting together a prototype system to show off to Nintendo EAD in October of 2007. And that's when things started going not good at all. They realized a little too late that this thing was going to be huge. Best case scenario was going to be a bit thicker than the DS Lite, but length and width-wise, yeah, no, it was going to be way too big. But I mean, it's a little late to turn back. They needed to present this thing ASAP, so they did, knowing full well it was pretty much going to flop. And flop it did. At the end of the presentation, they asked how many people would want to own the DSi, and 3 said yes, 7 said no. And they assumed the 3 that said yes were just being nice to the creator since he was right in the room with them. At that point, what can you do? You gotta start over, and that's not gonna be easy. They had already configured parts for the system, evaluated the prototypes, checked their durability and assembly, and they were just about to start making molds for it. But now, it's time to start all over and do it all over again. The funny thing was though, the team actually was really happy about this. Turns out no one on the team really liked the original design. They just thought, hey, you know, maybe when we actually feel it in our hands, it'll be better. It wasn't better. It was big, it was bulky, and it was heavy. So in order to fix that, they scrapped the second DS game slot and did a few other things to help slim down the system, like moving the CPU, raising the battery housing, and removing the Game Boy Advance slot. So now, with the entire system redesigned, it was time to bring it back to Nintendo EAD. And everyone thought this was way better, thank goodness. The newly designed system was happily received, and the DSi had been saved.
All right, hardware's complete. Now comes a very important question. What do we put on the DSi? It couldn't just be another DS Lite. It has to have something that'll set it apart. Something like the Wii had. Like a Wii menu, except it would be a DSi menu with a DSi shop and DSiWare and preloaded photo editing apps. Man, the DSi is actually kind of like a mini Wii in a way, but the philosophy behind it is very different. See, the Wii was designed to bring families together onto one system, but the DSi, it was meant to be my DS. Not specifically mine, but a DS that you could call your own. One that you could customize with various preloaded software and photos. That way, when you're out and about, everyone knows that it's your DS.
Hey, it's my DS. If you think about it, it makes sense why the DSi borrowed so much from the Wii. After all, a lot of the same people who worked on the Wii menu also worked on the DSi, and helped shape it into what it is today. But of course, those features we all know and love about the DSi had to be brainstormed first, and there were a lot of ideas that were scrapped since they only had time to include like 2 or 3 features before the system's release. One of those scrapped ideas was video calls. Much like the Wii U had that chat thing that no one ever used, the DSi was gonna have something similar. Nice idea, but getting it to work, nah, that would take way too much time. But the team knew that they had to use those cameras somehow, so they just decided to create a photo channel equivalent for the system. Masahiro Imaizumi was named director of this project, which happened completely by accident actually. At first he was simply a member of the console feature review team, and at some point mentioned, hey, I wrote down some cool ideas for that photo app idea. And the DSi team was like, cool, you're in charge of that now. And that's how Imaizumi became the director. And he took it seriously, deciding it would be best for this photo app to be more of a for fun thing than having it be a serious photo diary application. And Miyamoto agreed. In his own words, he noticed that many people on trains would simply text rather than play games just because it was so easy to do. So he thought, why don't we make the photo app easy too? Easy to cut up photos, add some doodles, maybe some frames, I don't know, just fun stuff. That's kind of how the DSi was. It just came with a lot of fun stuff, like the DSi Sound app, and that's something Miyamoto really wanted in the system. Towards the beginning of the DSi's development, he handed Iwata a list of ideas that he thought should be included in the new system. It was pretty long though, so as time went on, a lot of the ideas had to be scrapped, and one of these scrapped ideas was a music playing app. No one particularly cared all that much about it, it was just too much work, not enough time. Soon the specifics of the system were being finalized and Miyamoto decided to check out that list of included features. And lo and behold, his music app idea wasn't there. He asked the team what was up and they told him, we'll add it on the DSi shop later. But Miyamoto was not letting that happen. It didn't matter that the DSi was in its final stages of development. If the Mii channel could be put into the Wii at last minute, so could a music app. And the DSi team was just like, please, no, we already considered it, we don't have time to make anything interesting, and if it's not interesting, no one's gonna use it. And not to mention, lots of people would probably think a music app on a game console is weird, so why don't we just leave it as a downloadable thing later for people who actually would want it? And Iwata was on their side. They just didn't have enough time to brainstorm new ideas for this app. But Miyamoto did. He already had a big list of ideas that he had come up with, and Iwata, well, he was actually kind of impressed and decided, okay, sure, let's give it a shot. But the DSi team wasn't just gonna suddenly have more time to work on this, so Miyamoto decided to make it himself, along with Yusuke Akifasa, who had been working under Miyamoto his entire time at Nintendo. And Akifasa, man, he was on board. That moment he heard about Miyamoto's desire for a music app, he was ready to go. Ideas forming all over the place. Much like Miyamoto, he knew that the DSi just had to have a music playing app at launch, and they went for it. And around the same time, a game was being developed too, based on recording sound. So they thought, hey, you know, a music app is good and all, but since the DSi already has a mic, why don't we allow people to record stuff with the music app? And once again, they were brainstorming like crazy. Like, what if people could mess with the speed and pitch of recordings? Or what if we allowed users to record their own system startup noise? Sadly, that last idea didn't happen, but the other ideas managed to make their way in, somehow. I mean, they were already pushing it a lot, just adding in sound recording. But they managed to do everything that they wanted to with their app, now called Nintendo DSi Sound.
Yes. They made it. They made it. The DSi was finalized, both hardware and software. Though I guess I haven't exactly mentioned why it's called the DSi. See, a lot of people think that's because the I in DSi is for eyes, because it had cameras. And that is partly the reason, but another lesser known reason is because of the Wii. So you know how the Wii has two eyes in the name? It's representing a person, two people for the Wii coming together onto one system. The DSi, though, only has one eye, which represents one person, because it's my DS. And the best way they accomplished that was with the DSi Shop and DSiWare. There were tons of good things on the shop. And then there was WarioWare Snapped. Now, I know some people liked it. Well, liked is a strong word. I know some people that completed it. So, like, that was about, what, 20 minutes of gameplay?
For those of you who don't know what WarioWare Snapped is, it's like WarioWare, but you use the DSi camera to track your face and hands in order to complete microgames. But as you could probably guess, the problem with the game was the finicky controls, not to mention that you had 15 seconds to complete micro games, and there was no leveling up, no speed ups, no nothing. Just 5 micro games, and once you beat them, hey, you've completed one of the 4, count them, 4 stages in total. But I just can't grow to hate this game, half because it's so nostalgic to me for whatever reason. I never owned it, a friend did. Plus the fact that the DSi camera was used to do this, that's very impressive. Throughout the development of this game though, there were a lot of issues with hand tracking. See, originally instead of setting the DSi down and using the front camera to detect the player's head and hands, you'd instead hold the DSi with your left hand and then the game used the back camera to detect your right hand. The problem was with the shadows that the system would create in certain lighting, which would make the game think that the shadow was your hand, and of course that's not good. So they tried putting a black mat on the floor so the player's hand wouldn't stand out and it wouldn't cast a shadow. The problem now was that if you even had a minor suntan, you couldn't be tracked at all, you just blend in with the mat. They thought about this and decided, well, if we can't track the hand, maybe we can just track the index finger. So they created a finger sleeve with a specific color so it could be tracked no matter your skin tone. You'd still need the black mat though. They honestly considered selling WarioWare Snapped as a cartridge game complete with a black mat and finger sleeve. But yeah, I don't think you could convince the higher up of that, let alone the consumer. So tracking the right hand was out, but they still wanted to use the outside camera, so they thought, hey, well, if you can't track your hand, why don't we just track the player's bare feet?
No.
Yeah, they didn't like that idea either, believe it or not, so they decided to scrap the outer camera idea and just use the inner camera instead, with the system being set on a table, not being held. And instead of feet, it tracked your head, and this worked a lot better. After all, they had worked on the face training DS game that I mentioned before, so they did have some idea on how to track faces. But there was a new problem on their hands. The game didn't feel fast. WarioWare is known for fast-paced, rapid gameplay, and this was just really slow. At this point, they pretty much had no other option though. Using the inner camera with head tracking got them the best results. It was either this, or just scrapping the game entirely. So they got ready to submit a new proposal for the game, using the catchphrase, WarioWare, don't touch? The team was feeling a bit down about this though. They couldn't help it. The game didn't feel like WarioWare, but the proposal needed to be submitted and they just, as director Nao Komori put it, just felt like they were teetering on the edge of an abyss. But a ray of light appeared over Mori, And by that I mean he ran into one of the programmers on his way home one day, where he was told that even though the game only shows a silhouette on screen, the DSi is actually capturing the player in full detail. And then, inspiration hit. He thought, what if the fun of the game wasn't the game itself? What if it came from tricking your friends into taking embarrassing videos of them while playing the game? So in the proposal, they quickly added this idea of a bonus section, where at the end of the microgames, it would show little animations of what you looked like while you were playing. And the people at the office loved it. Now, according to Nintendo guidelines though, if you take a photo on the DS, it has to make a click sound. It's just common etiquette. But of course, they couldn't do that. It would ruin the surprise. So to kind of work their way around it, they chose to simply not save the photos. The moment you close the DSi, the photos are gone. That way, if someone is actually embarrassed or mad or wants to kick you in the face, you had no need to worry. It's just between friends.
Maybe this game isn't so bad after all. Maybe I just looked at it the wrong way. It's less a game and more of a tool just to make funny videos with your friends. Sure, it doesn't feel like WarioWare. It's finicky, slow, it's not even all that fun. But the fun isn't from the game itself. The fun is from the videos of your friends and family in silly little poses. You know, I'm sorry, WarioWare. I misjudged you. So next up is the final DSiWare game I want to discuss, though it's less of a game and more of an animation tool. It's Flipnote Studio. I can't tell you how many hours I put into this thing, just creating animations, uploading them, watching other people's. Man, it was really, really fun. I was always happy to hear that jingle every time I booted up the game. Oh, that's good. Classic, classic.
Flipnote Studio began as a simple after-work project by Koizumi and Shimizu after they had just finished developing Super Mario Galaxy in 2007. It was just a for-fun project that they worked on after their normal workday ended. And you're probably thinking that this project was originally some sort of drawing thing or animation tool, but no, at first it was just simply a networking Wii application. But that didn't go very far. They didn't really know what they wanted from it, so instead they decided to switch gears to the DS and created a small tool that allowed you to draw a picture on the DS and have it display over the network on your Wii. This was cool and all, but it needed something more, and after looking at Shimizu's drawing on the Wii, Koizumi noticed his unique style and thought, what if we created some kind of like flipbook animation? And 2 days later, they finished it, working and done. Now what? Well, while they were playing around with it, they thought, hey, you know, maybe we could add like sound. The DS already has a mic in it, so why not? And the next day it was added in, done. The entire prototype was finished in less than a week. So with it in hand, they decided to show it off to other people at Nintendo under the title Flipbook Workshop. It was generally well received, except for a few people that said, yeah, it's nice to watch people's animation, but I'd never use it. I don't want to do any animation stuff. So to help with this, Koizumi and Shimizu decided to rebrand their project as not only an animation tool, but simply a notepad for people to quickly jot things down. And with that, they decided to rename the project Ugoku Memocho, which means moving memo. And in other countries, it was simply called Flipnote Studio. One of the biggest things they wanted for this project was the ability to share your Flipnotes with friends. And why not? That was the most fun part about it. They thought about using the DS's local communication to share notes wirelessly, but they didn't particularly like it as the only way to share Flipnotes. Plus, they already had this great looking Wii app that would show off all your Flipnotes, so they considered turning Flipnote Studio into Wiiware, where you would get Flipnote Studio on your Wii, use the DS download feature to download the drawing app on your DS, then you could draw to your heart's content, make some animations, and then save it to your Wii. Basically, the Wiiware was the main software, and the DS was meant to function more as a drawing tablet. They also wanted to have the Wii app connect to the internet so that way you could exchange Flipnotes with more than just nearby friends, but this whole plan changed once they learned about the DSi. Immediately, they knew that this was the perfect platform. Forget Wiiware, we'll make it DSiWare. But still, they wanted it to connect to the internet. After all, as they learned, some people would just prefer to watch Flipnotes rather than make them, so having an internet bulletin board was crucial. They just needed a back-end system made and a server set up, no problem. Except there was a problem. Nintendo's network development department was booked solid. It wouldn't be until the latter half of 2009 that they could get something done, and they were just afraid if they waited that long, they would miss becoming one of the first DSiWare applications on the platform. Granted though, it wasn't until the latter half of 2009 that anyone outside of Japan got it, but hey, you know, it's cool, it's cool. So they asked Iwata for help on what to do. They wanted to release Flipnote Studio in 2008, but Nintendo couldn't create a server until 2009. What should they do? Wait? Or was there another option? And in a moment of inspiration, Iwata jumped out of his chair and said, "Let's work with Hatina." Wait a minute, it's Hatena, isn't it? I always called it Hatina. It's freaking Hatena.
Now, in case you didn't know, Hatena is a lot of things. They're a bookmarking site, a diary service, a haiku board, which is basically Twitter, a dictionary, so many things. Now, they hadn't worked with Nintendo before this, but because they're Nintendo, they of course jumped at the chance to help Flipnote Studio make its 2008 release by creating its server, its backend, and its front-end website, Flipnote Hatena. They were crucial to this whole Flipnote Studio thing, but even so, they didn't show up for the sequel, Flipnote Studio 3D. Nintendo instead took the charge of that one. Thank you, Nintendo.
Okay, sorry, can I just say how disappointing Flipnote Studio 3D was in America? You know all those online features that they had? No? Well, it's because they never added those online features outside of Japan. Instead, Nintendo went to the trouble of making this whole mini Nintendo Direct on Flipnote Studio 3D, explaining all of these online features, and it looks so cool. And then they just scrapped it all. And that release date, that was delayed too, almost 2 years in North America and 3 years in Europe. All due to unexpectedly high usage in Japan. So high that we only ever got a shell of what Flipnote Studio 3D was. Okay, I'm good. Let's head back to 2008, shall we? Koizumi and Shimizu still had to convince Hatena to help on the project, even if they were pretty much going to accept anyway because it's freaking Nintendo. Still, when the Hatena team first saw Flipnote Studio, they honestly wondered if it could actually be sold as a game. In their mind, there wasn't exactly all that much here worth paying for. And I guess they were technically right. Even Nintendo knew it should only just be a free app, and after explaining that to them and giving them a hands-on demo, they were on board. But how should this online service work? We just can't have anyone post anything at any time. Someone might post something unsavory. Koizumi mentioned how he wanted the service to have some kind of upvote downvote system to help weed out the unsavory Flipnotes. But Hatena had a different idea, a reporting system. Instead of someone posting a Flipnote and then getting depressed that their Peach X Mario AMV featuring Boulevard of Broken Dreams got downvoted 30 times, they decided to only have specific people be able to report Flipnotes, and then everyone else would be allowed to only praise with stars and such. And those certain amount of people were the web users. You'd post a Flipnote, it would get shown on the web immediately, and then after a certain period of time, if it hadn't even been reported once, it would appear on the DSi.
Doing it like this allowed Flipnote Hatena to remain free and clear on the DSi, thanks to the thousands and thousands of hardworking Japanese men and women who spent their countless hours of free time looking at my embarrassing Flipnotes. Oh gosh. It's okay though, right? It's okay. It's shut down. It doesn't exist anymore. No one made a backup, right?
Flipnote Hatena. I know this is goodbye.
Nope, we're not doing this now. If you want to hear this, it's on Patreon. Instead, let's talk about something not embarrassing. The new microphone. I'm sure you noticed that it sounded different, and I think it sounds way better than my Blue Yeti, and it's the Neat Mic King B. This was sent to me by Neat Mics themselves. It's amazing. I love this microphone so much. If you want to check it out, links in the description, and yep, that's all.